I am the reason I survived the man who thought I wouldn't. It's funny what your brain chooses to focus on when you realize you've just been left to die. For me, it wasn't the weight of the falling rocks or the taste of dust in my mouth. It was the way his voice sounded, calm, almost gentle, like he was saying goodnight instead of goodbye. These blankets should keep you warm, Jules. Then a pause. Then the rumble. Then blackness, not darkness. Blackness. Darkness is what happens when you turn off a light. Blackness is what happens when the world decides you don't exist anymore. My name is Dr. Juliana Holt. I'm a geologist, a scientist, the kind of person who finds beauty in basalt columns and knows how to pronounce molybdenite in her sleep. I've mapped fault lines across the Andes, studied tectonic drift in Papua, and for the last 6 years, I've been chasing a dream deep beneath the Ruby Crest Mountains of Nevada. Buried under billions of years of silence was something the world was starving for. Rare earth metals, specifically hafnium and dysprosium, used in everything from medical imaging to missile guidance. And I found it. Me, not we, though Simon Holt, my husband of 16 years, would probably disagree. When I showed him the preliminary survey results, he acted impressed, said it was brilliant, said we should go check it out, together. Like old times, he packed the tents and dry food. I packed the data and the satellite maps. I thought it was going to be romantic. That's what makes it worse, I think. We drove up on a Thursday, September. The air was dry and sharp, the kind that makes every breath feel earned. We parked near a deer trail nobody used and hiked for hours through brush and granite, until we reached the mouth of Shadow Needle, the cave I'd first logged 5 years ago. It had taken that long to secure permits, funding, and time, and just 10 minutes to lose everything. Inside, the walls glittered with promise. I knelt beside a seam of dark, iridescent stone, heart-pounding, gently placing sample after sample into tubes. This was it, the breakthrough. Behind me, I heard Simon step back. Then further back. I didn't think anything of it. Not at first. Jules, he said, like he was calling me in for dinner. Come here. I want to show you something. I turned, samples in hand. He smiled. The kind of smile you reserve for someone you're about to hurt and want them to thank you for it anyway. I love you, he whispered. You know that, right? Then he grabbed me by the waist. Simon, what are you? Push. Hard. Fast. Straight into the rock wall. By the time I scrambled up, the entrance was already collapsing. He'd triggered a charge, planted it behind a crevice when I wasn't looking. The dust, the roar, the wall of sound and stone, it all came at once. I screamed, I begged, I clawed. But he was already gone. Now you can have your rocks forever, he called back, voice muffled through rubble. They loved you more than I ever could, and then silence. I don't remember how long I screamed. I only remember when I stopped. That silence was worse. It was the kind of silence that grew legs and sat beside you, whispering things you didn't want to hear. I had my backpack, a half bottle of water, a flashlight, some protein bars, a sample kit. I was alive, but not for long. I pressed my palms to the cave walls, breathed through my nose, tried to think. Simon knew no one would come looking. Not for days, maybe not ever. But he'd forgotten something. I don't die easy. 30 minutes later, deeper in the cave, I saw movement. Not rats. A person. A man stepped into the narrow beam of my flashlight, broad-shouldered, bearded, dirt-streaked, holding an old lantern. Don't scream, he said, voice low, calm. I'm not here to hurt you. And just like that, this wasn't just a betrayal story anymore. It was a survival one. He didn't move like a stranger. He moved like someone who'd been down here a long, long time. He stepped into full view, maybe 6 feet tall, early 40s, thick beard, canvas jacket, boots worn to the leather, a hunting knife strapped to his thigh. He could have been a serial killer. He could have been a mirage, either way. I aimed my flashlight square at his chest and braced myself. Who the hell are you? He raised both hands, palms open. No threat, name's Beck, he said. And I think we've both been screwed over by someone we trusted. That made me pause. You live in this cave. Not exactly. But I know it better than the bastard who sealed you in. He walked a slow arc around the rockfall, examined the collapse like someone reading a crime scene. He blocked the primary air tunnel. He muttered. Deliberate. That's murder, not miscalculation. I stared at him, pulse still thumping. He looked real. He felt real. But I couldn't afford to be wrong. Why would you help me? Beck looked up from the rubble. His eyes caught mine. Not soft, not hard, just human. Because I've been where you are, he said. And no one came for me. We moved fast after that, or as fast as a bruised body can manage underground. The deeper tunnels were tight, humid, stinking of minerals and time. My limbs ached. My chest felt like it had been caved in alongside the rock. Beck guided me through a twisting passage, one hand trailing the wall like he could feel vibrations the rest of us missed. Used to be a rescue diver, he said casually, before everything went to hell. What happened? He didn't answer, just pointed toward a glimmer ahead, a chamber lit by a single lantern and the shimmer of stored gear. Blankets, bottled water, shelves made of driftwood, a fire pit built under a crack in the ceiling. It wasn't cozy, but it was human. Welcome to my fallback point, he said. Not much, but it beats the grave you were in. I sat on a makeshift crate, hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped the cup of tea he brewed from some dried leaves. You okay? Beck asked. Me husband tried to kill me, I said flatly. So no, but I'm not dead yet. He nodded slowly, as if that answer told him everything he needed to know. What did he want? He asked. I looked at my sample pack, still sealed, still full of proof, rare metals, billions worth. And if I'd died, the rights would have passed to him. Beck shook his head with a low whistle. Always about money, isn't it? I thought he loved me. People lie better when they think you'll never walk out alive. I stared into the cup. Its heat didn't reach my fingers. We rested there for hours, or maybe minutes. Time bends underground. Beck mapped our escape, a network of fissures, chambers, and an underground river he claimed led to the base of the range. Dangerous. Tight, cold, but possible. You'll need to crawl through at least 20 feet of rock, he said, and swim through a tunnel with no light at the end. Just instinct and timing. Sounds lovely. It's that or wait for oxygen to run out. He had a point. Why'd you stay down here? I asked. Why not leave? He leaned back, voice softer. My wife and daughter were buried in a rock slide. I was trained to save people, but I was 20 seconds too far. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. He didn't need comfort, just witness. When we set off again, the tunnels narrowed fast. At one point, we crawled on our bellies through limestone and water, our breathing the only sound besides the slow drip of cave dew. I focused on Beck's boots ahead of me. I whispered me, anything. He spoke evenly without looking back. Her name was Leah. Our daughter's was Sophie. She liked ponies. Hated peas. Dyed in a yellow jacket she wore every day. I clenched my jaw. The walls closed in. But his voice kept the panic away. An hour later, we reached the underground river. It roared like thunder in a bottle. Dark, fast, unforgiving. There's a trail on the other side, Beck said. We swim under the wall. 5 meters, maybe 6. I'll go first. And if something goes wrong, I won't. I didn't trust the water. But I trusted his eyes. He vanished into the black. Seconds ticked by. I counted them. 1, 2. Then, a splash, a call. Seal air! I dove. The current grabbed me like it had been waiting. I tucked my arms, kicked, felt the slope, the rise, the ache in my lungs, then air. Beck pulled me from the river. I collapsed, coughing, soaked, shaking. You did it, he said, wrapping a thermal blanket around me. I thought I died. Not today. And something in the way he said, it made me want to believe we weren't just surviving. We were coming back from the dead. We sat in a narrow cavern, steam rising from the heat packs Beck had tucked under our thin shelter tarp. My skin burned from the cold, even while wrapped in a dry blanket. My body hurt. My muscles screamed. But I was alive, and I wasn't alone. You think he's told anyone yet? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Simon. My husband. Beck didn't answer immediately. He passed me a protein bar, cracked one open for himself. He's probably already moved, he said. Filed the death certificate. Claimed the discovery. I stared at the cave wall across from me. Cold stone. Unforgiving and steady, just like Simon's logic. You think anyone would believe him? I asked. Beck shrugged. People believe what's easiest. What's comfortable. A grieving husband with a sad story. That's comfortable. I nodded, jaw tight. Then I'll make them uncomfortable. We moved again after 10 minutes. The tunnel narrowed into a crevice barely wider than a person. At one point, the ledge gave out completely, and we were forced to wade waist, deep through ice water, gripping handholds along the wall. Keep sideways, Beck instructed. Use the friction. Don't lean out. I obeyed, even when my legs went numb, even when my fingers bled. Fear wanted to crawl into my throat, but I didn't let it. Not now. Not after everything. We stopped again at a dry bend where the rock curved up like a dome. I sat down heavily. My breath came in ragged gasps. You okay? Beck asked. No, I said. But I'm not quitting. He smiled faintly. A real one this time. You're tougher than half the survivalists I've met. I used to think toughness was about being unbreakable. I muttered. Turns out, it's just keeping going. Even when you already broke. Exactly, Beck said. It's about what you do after the break. As we rested, I asked him something that had been sitting heavy on my mind. What do you think he's telling people right now? Beck didn't hesitate. That it was an accident. That he tried to save you. That you slipped and he barely made it out alive. I clenched my fists. And I bet he's already pitching to the investors, I added. Selling my discovery. Using my data. You still have your samples? Beck asked. Waterproofed and safe in my pack. Good, he said. Then you've got everything you need to bury him in the truth. The hours passed. We climbed, crawled, scraped through narrow passageways that smelled of pine sap and rising air. My headlamp flickered once, then steadied. My breath grew stronger. Then, a shift in the air. Beck slowed. We're close, he said. There's a veil of vines over the exit. You'll see it before you feel it. I didn't believe him until I did. Light. Real. Golden, pulsing through the green curtain of leaves ahead. I stumbled forward, pushed the vines aside, and the sun hit my face. I cried. I didn't mean to. I didn't even realize I was crying until Beck placed a hand lightly on my shoulder. Welcome back, he said. I turned in a slow circle, trees, sky, wind, the scent of cedar and dust. A hawk circled high above us. We weren't just alive, we were back. From the overlook, I could see the town of Larkridge far below. Tiny roofs, winding roads, and the faint glint of car windows under the morning sun. 3 hours later, we walked into town like ghosts. Our clothes were torn, our skin pale and scratched. People stopped and stared. We headed for the diner first, maybe because I needed something normal. The smell of coffee, the clang of dishes, the hum of conversation. What I didn't expect was him. On the TV behind the counter. Simon, standing at the mouth of the same mountain, dressed in black, speaking to the press. We were exploring a new vein when the cave-in happened. I tried everything to save her, but it was too late. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The waitress frowned. Mom, are you okay? Beck stepped forward. Is there a sheriff's office in town? 2 blocks east. End of Main. We didn't wait. The bell above the sheriff's door jingled as we stepped inside. A middle-aged deputy looked up from his paperwork. His eyes widened when he saw us, mud-streaked, blistered, and very much not dead. I'm Dr. Juliana Holt, I said, voice flat. And I need to report an attempted murder. That sentence stopped time. They moved fast after that. We were led into a back room, given water, space heaters, dry clothes from a lost and found bin. The shock started to wear off. The rage didn't. A second officer arrived. Then a third. I gave my statement. Everything from the survey data to Simon's smile before the rocks fell. Beck corroborated, word for word. The sheriff typed something into his terminal, eyes narrowing. "Your husband filed a death certificate," he muttered. "2 days ago. Already started claiming your discovery as next of kin. He's trying to steal everything I've worked for," I said, "and sell it to the highest bidder." "Where's the site?" "North slope of Ruby Crest. Off Forest Route 9. About 2 miles from the Widow's Fork Trail." "Good," he said. "He won't see you coming." The next morning, I wore borrowed jeans and a flannel that smelled like cedar. Didn't matter. I felt stronger than I had in years. Beck knocked on my door at 6 a.m. sharp. "They're setting up at the site," he said. "Sheriffs, detectives, hidden cams. All of it." I nodded once. "Let's ruin his big finale." We drove up in an unmarked SUV, stopping just before the ridgeline. From behind a thicket of trees, I could see Simon. He was laughing, charming the investors, waving his hands with that same pitchman rhythm I once thought was love. I stayed hidden in the vehicle while the microphone picked up every word. It was hard, Seaman was saying, voice heavy with practiced grief. She was brilliant, so passionate. But the cave in it was brutal. I tried everything. I couldn't get to her in time. A detective leaned into his radio. "That's enough. Time to go." I stepped out of the SUV and onto the gravel. Birds scattered. Simon turned mid-sentence. His face drained of color. "Hello, Simon," I said. He blinked, stammered. "You're alive." Disappointed. The investors backed away slowly. The sheriff stepped forward. "We have physical evidence. We have a witness. We have a recording." He turned. "Simon Holt, you are under arrest for the attempted murder of your wife, Dr. Juliana Holt." Simon didn't resist. He looked at me like I'd risen from his nightmares. Maybe I had. As they cuffed him, he made one last try. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." I stared him down. "You buried me, and you thought the rocks would keep the truth quiet. But the truth was louder than you ever were." He was led away. The investors stood stunned. One muttered something about contracts, litigation, ownership. I didn't care. I turned my back and walked away. Beck was waiting by the tree line. "You okay?" he asked. "It's done," I said. He didn't say not quite. He didn't have to. We both knew this wasn't the end, but it was the turning point. That night, back at the motel, I couldn't sleep. I stood at the window, staring into the quiet town below. Beck sat on the edge of the bed, sipping bad coffee. "Do you ever wonder?" I said slowly. "If some places protect you even when people don't." He didn't answer right away. Then, "I don't think it's the place," he said. "I think it's the people who find you in it." And just like that, I let myself feel it. The grief, the betrayal, the survival. I'd walked out of the mountain. Now I had to walk back into my life. The next morning, I stood in front of the Nevada Institute of Geosciences, clutching a manila folder in one hand and my breath in the other. The building looked the same, but I didn't. Inside, I was greeted like a miracle. Hugs, gasps, a few stunned stares. Then came the questions. "We thought you were dead." "The news said it was a landslide." "Is it true?" "He left you." I didn't answer most of them. I just walked down the hallway, straight to the office of Director Hanley Ramirez, the man who'd fought to get me the original funding. He stood as I entered. His jaw dropped. "Degra Holt, I need my name back," I said, laying the folder down, "and my work." Inside, the original geological maps, time, stamped sample logs, my personal survey footage, and the sealed ore specimens Simon never touched. Ramirez flipped through the pages, mouth tightening. "He filed for spousal transfer of intellectual property 3 days ago," he muttered. "Claimed sole survivor. Then we revoke it," I said. "Now." He didn't argue. By noon, my discovery, now renamed Holt Ridge, was back in my name. The death certificate was rescinded. Simon's access to anything scientific, legal, or financial had been locked down by court order. And for the first time in weeks, I felt whole again. Later, Beck and I walked the Institute's lab halls together. He looked so out of place among the white coats and mineral displays, but he didn't seem uncomfortable. "This is where I first tested the samples," I said, gesturing to a polished lab bench. "And that's where Simon used to sit during board meetings, pretending to care." Beck smiled. "It's funny how liars always underestimate the quiet ones." I looked at him sideways. "Are you calling me quiet?" "I'm calling you dangerous," he said. "In the best way." He followed me to the back of the research center, to a room filled with slabs of raw rock, cross-sectioned veins of hafnium glittering under museum lights. "This is it," I said. "This is what he tried to kill me for." Beck ran a finger along the edge of a sample. "You know what I see. Money. Purpose." I looked up. He meant it. Over the next few weeks, I returned to the field. This time with a full team. This time with legal protection. This time with Beck by my side. He didn't pretend to be a scientist, but he taught my interns how to build emergency shelters, how to filter water from lichen, how to survive when the world turns against you. He became part of the landscape, steady, quiet, capable. The Institute published a paper naming Holt Ridge as one of the richest new deposits of rare earth metals in the western U.S. Investors offered buyouts. I declined. Instead, I proposed a new extraction model, sustainable, indigenous, consulted, minimally invasive. The Institute approved it unanimously. And Simon, he pled not guilty. Of course he did. But the evidence was overwhelming. He was denied bail. He stared at me from the defendant's table like a ghost seeing sunlight. "You buried me," I whispered to him outside the courtroom. And I came back with the mountain at my back. He didn't reply. He didn't have to. He knew he'd lost. That night, Beck knocked on my office door. He held 2 mugs of tea. Steam curled between us like breath and cold air. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what comes next." I raised an eyebrow. "We already survived hell. I thought that was next." He smiled. "I mean life. I don't know a damn thing about academia. But I know loyalty. I know how to show up. I know what it means to pull someone from the dark." I looked down at my tea, then back at him. "I don't need you to be a professor, Beck." "What do you need?" "A partner." He didn't answer with words. He just stepped closer, placed a hand over mine, and for the first time since the cave, I let someone in without flinching. Time passed. Not slow, just forward, every morning. I woke with the kind of quiet I hadn't known in years. No whispers of doubt. No shadows pretending to be love. Just the soft sound of boots on gravel, of Beck brewing coffee beside the fire pit behind the lab. He never asked for anything, never tried to define what we were. He just stayed, steady, present, real. And that, more than anything, helped me remember who I was before Simon and who I'd become after him. One day, as the first frost swept the valley, Beck showed up to my office with a piece of driftwood carved into the shape of the cave's exit. "Made this for you," he said, a little sheepishly. A reminder. I turned it over in my hand. Simple, solid, weathered. Off what? That sometimes the way out becomes the way in. I set it on my desk, right beside the sample that started it all. "You're poetic for a guy who used to sleep next to rocks." "They make good pillows," he said, deadpan. Weeks later, the Institute offered me a full professorship tenure. Lab funding, a staff of 12. I said yes. I also asked Beck to lead a new course we created, Applied Survival Science. When the Earth traps you. He laughed for 5 minutes straight, then agreed. By spring, the trial was over. Simon was convicted on multiple counts: attempted murder, fraud, obstruction. I didn't attend the sentencing. I didn't need to. He was behind bars, and I was out in the world again. One evening, Beck and I stood on the Institute's rooftop balcony. Below us, the lights of Larkridge flickered like distant constellations. Above us, the stars wheeled slowly in silence. He handed me a cup of hot tea. "You ever think we never would have met if not for that cave? You mean if I hadn't been buried alive by my husband?" "Yeah, That. I sipped. Then I guessed that cave wasn't the end. No, he said. It was your beginning. And we fell into a silence that wasn't awkward. It was full, like the breath you take right before doing something brave. I turned to him. I'm not afraid anymore. He looked at me. Of what? Being alone. Being misunderstood. Being buried. I paused. You taught me something down there? That surviving isn't just escaping the dark. It's deciding who you want to be in the light. Beck's hand found mine. So who do you want to be? I smiled. Someone who builds. Someone who protects. Someone who never lets the truth stay buried again. He nodded once. Then let's build it together. And we did. Not perfectly. Not quickly. But with the kind of trust you only earn when you've crawled through hell and come out on the other side with someone else's hand in yours. We built a life. We built a lab. We built a truth that no one could steal. They named the mineral ridge after me, Holt Ridge. I signed the papers on a windy Thursday morning with dirt still under my fingernails and a grin that wouldn't quit. You sure you want your name on something that nearly killed you? Beck asked. I looked up at the jagged cliffs beyond the Institute, at the cave that had once swallowed me whole. It didn't kill me, I said. It introduced me to myself. I gave a lecture that month to a room packed with students. Not about geology, not really. I told them about pressure, about how the earth folds in on itself to create something stronger, about fault lines, and how the worst fractures often expose the rarest truths. When someone tries to bury you, I told them, remember, seeds grow in the dark too. Beck and I bought a small cabin near the edge of the woods, quiet, wooden, a real fireplace, no internet for miles. It wasn't escape. It was intention. Some nights we sat in silence. Some nights we danced in the living room barefoot with no music. Sometimes I still woke from dreams of rocks falling and voices disappearing into stone. But every time I reached out and found his hand, still there, still steady. One morning, nearly a year after it all, I stood at the mouth of the cave that almost became my grave. It looked smaller now, like something that had lost its power over me. I stepped inside just far enough to hear the echo of my breath. You took everything from me, I whispered into the dark, and in return I took myself back. The silence answered. Not cold this time, not cruel, just still. I walked back out into the light, boots crunching over frost. Beck was waiting at the trailhead with 2 mugs of coffee and that carved piece of driftwood I'd once kept on my desk. He handed it to me. Thought we might add a new carving, he said. You ready? I took out my penknife, scratched a word into the wood beneath the cave symbol. Freedom. We walked home under a rising sun, not in triumph, not in vengeance, but in peace, because I had walked through betrayal, through survival, through the slow, honest rebuilding of a life no one else could define for me again. And as the forest whispered around us, I whispered back. I was never meant to stay buried. Sometimes, survival isn't just about escaping the cave. It's about what you learn in the darkness, when no one is coming to save you, when the people you trusted most are the ones who sealed the exit behind them. Juliana Holt didn't just fight to stay alive. She fought to be seen again, to be believed again, and most of all, to belong to herself again. This story isn't just hers. It's for anyone who's ever been left behind. Anyone who's been told their voice doesn't matter. Anyone who's been buried, by betrayal, by grief, by silence. You are not alone. You are not broken. And you are never too far gone to find your way back. Sometimes it only takes one person who sees you in the dark to remind you that you still exist and that you still matter. If this story moved you, if it felt like it could have been your story, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell us, what cave did you have to crawl out of, and who helped you find the light? Drop your thoughts in the comments. New real life stories posted every week about strength, survival, betrayal, and rebirth. Subscribe to Telling Story with Me, where stories don't just entertain, they heal.